funny you should say that, because we are planning on putting the whole unedited interviews up on KRON4.com.
Oh, and that's really smart, because on TV you might only have on like the local news, in a half an hour news you have 20 minutes of content. Well, you only have 8 minutes for news, right? And so you got to slice everything up into 1 minute time chunks. I mean, you just, when you walked in, you were telling me about a big fire in Lake Tahoe, and 125 people lost their homes. You'll be able to put up maybe 90 seconds of news about 125 people having their lives totally destroyed and totally upended. But on the internet, you can go and put hours of information if somebody really cares to know what it's like or wants to know more information about that.
Well, and I guess the people that have run my business for years and years and years have said that people don't really have the time or the interest or the inclination for all of that, that we have to find everything and narrow it down to its essential elements. But are you finding that there is an audience for broader, more?
There is, and it's because of Google. Because if I'm really passionate about something and I really care about something, I might be only a very small audience, people who care about digital SLRs might only be 700,000 people in the world, right? It might be only a very small audience. So CNN and ABC and NBC can't dedicate hours to that small audience because they have 24 hours in the day, and they can't expand that, right? You have one TV station, you got to make sure you reach as broad an audience as possible. This is why so much Paris Hilton stuff gets talked about, right? Because they know a wide audience cares about Paris Hilton, but only a narrow audience cares about Nikon cameras, right? But now all the Nikon camera freaks in the world can go to Google, type Nikon camera blog, and find other people in the world who care about the same thing. And if you care about Nikon cameras, you'll sit through an hour-long video about the new camera coming out. In fact, you might even sit through 3 or 4 hours, right? One about the new camera, one with the designer of the camera, one with a tour of the factory where they're made. You might really go in depth, and then you're going to spend all day long talking to other camera owners and showing them all your Flickr photos that you took with the new camera, And so it's that two-way nature, and it's that I can find other people in the world who care about the same thing as I do. That really is different today than it was in the 80s.
So if you're talking about these very small segments of audience,
yep.
Is there a way for content producers like you then to go out and monetize that audience?
Oh, absolutely. Seagate sponsors my show, not because I have a huge mass audience, right? But I have a very specific tech-interested audience. And Seagate wants to make sure that they reach that audience. They don't care that somebody who cares about Paris Hilton knows what a Seagate product is. But they certainly want to know, they want to reach the CTO at Google, or somebody who's going to go out this weekend and buy a terabyte hard drive. And those are probably likely to be people passionate about technology. You only need a terabyte hard drive if you're shooting HD video and shooting a lot of still photos and converting all your music, to the computer. And so they want to reach that audience, the people who are passionate about technology, rather than the mass audience who doesn't, who barely knows what an iPod is right now.
So let's talk a little bit about, you were at Microsoft, you decided for some unfathomable reason to give up the Pacific Northwest for Half Moon Bay. I mean, yeah. I don't, but what was it that brought you here?
I grew up here. I grew up about a mile from Apple Computer. When I was in junior high, I got a tour of Apple when they were one building. Wow. So I'm very fortunate to have had a dad who was an engineer in Silicon Valley and been around smart people all my life because of his involvement in the Valley. And so I grew up here. I moved to Seattle to work at Microsoft for 3 years and then came back. 'Cause most of my family and friends are down here, and certainly the industry's here. I travel a lot around the world, and there's some interesting stuff happening in London and China and India, some in Japan, certainly in gadgets. Japan is the gadget world. But Silicon Valley drags all those people here for conferences, for money. If you go to Sand Hill Road, they're funding everything interesting happening, or a lot that's happening in China and India, right? And even Skype, that was just designed in Eastern Europe, the money came from Sand Hill Road, right? So you know, this area keeps dragging people here. You know, like Lemur, who's a famous French blogger and helped the French president get elected, right? He's moving to San Francisco. Why? Because this is the center of the tech world. I certainly couldn't do my job anywhere else. You know, I could, you know, Seattle certainly has an interesting tech thing happening, but it's not like here. It's probably 1/100th as diverse as the San Francisco area.
What's the state of innovation in this space and also in the Bay Area?
Well, the world has collapsed. That's one thing that you really notice. I mean, if you go to a page called Twitter Vision, you can actually see people writing live right now all over the world. You see, you know, a kid in China, a kid in India, a kid in Mexico City. During the Mexico City earthquake, there were 7 people on Twitter at the time of the earthquake. I knew about the earthquake before the USGS website actually reported it. You know, because people would say, "My God, there's a big earthquake going on right now," you know? And I was like, "Whoa!" And then somebody would start up a video stream and start video broadcasting over, you know, like Ustream or you know, Kite.tv or something like that. So the world has collapsed. I can talk to somebody in England just as easily as I can talk to you right now. And so innovations now, if you're a kid or anybody who comes out with an interesting new product or an interesting new idea, you can show it to a worldwide audience from anywhere. I launched Co-Comment product. We launched it from a Swiss chalet in Switzerland with eight people, no press conference. We just, you know, took pictures of the CEO who was showing me the product, explained what it did, linked to his website. In less than 24 hours, he had 100,000 signups for his beta. So there is no distance anymore. We can launch products no matter where you are in the world. And so innovation is speeding up. The world is speeding up. You know, if something interesting gets announced, the whole world will find out about it in a few hours. You know, I see stories go from blogs, you know, from Twitter to blogs to front page of the New York Times in 24 or 48 hours.